Every morning at 6 a.m., Pauline Rivers, a quiet dishwasher at a neighborhood cafe in upstate New York, walked the same foggy path to work, alone, unnoticed, and rarely spoken to beyond the usual morning. Life had taught her to expect little, to give quietly, and to move through the world like a whisper. That's why, when she noticed a skinny girl with messy hair sitting by the back door dumpster eating cold leftovers out of a crumpled bag, she didn't call security or ask questions. She just offered a warm muffin. The next day the girl returned, and so did Pauline, this time with scrambled eggs and a note folded gently in a napkin. "No need to thank me. Just eat." Their silent exchange became routine. Pauline never asked for the girl's name, and the child never gave it. But there was something sacred in the silence, the kind that understands hunger needs food, not interrogation. Then one morning, the girl didn't come. Days passed. Pauline kept leaving food, until one snowy Tuesday, a polished black SUV pulled up outside the cafe, and a uniformed officer stepped out, holding a folded flag. He asked for Pauline by name. Turns out the girl was the daughter of a fallen Marine, and Pauline, through quiet kindness, had upheld a soldier's last hope that someone somewhere would look after his child without ever needing to be asked. Every town has its quiet corners, and Martin Blake had made peace with his own. A small, modest cafe nestled between a gas station and an aging bookstore in rural Illinois. For years, Martin worked the early shift, bussing tables and prepping food before sunrise. He wasn't one for grand gestures or loud conversations, but when a young boy started appearing every morning at the farthest booth, silent, hungry, and alone, Martin noticed. The boy never ordered food, just water. He'd sit quietly, reading a worn-out book, his oversized backpack slumped beside him. Something about the way he watched the plates of pancakes pass, or how he folded his hands to hide the tremble of hunger, stirred a long-buried ache in Martin. So, one morning, Martin, accidentally, delivered an extra plate of food, pancakes, warm and fresh. "Kitchen messed up," he said with a shrug. The boy hesitated, then devoured every bite. This unspoken ritual repeated itself daily. Martin never asked for a name. The boy never offered one. But the trust slowly grew. A small nod, a quiet "thank you," a glance that lasted a second longer. Martin didn't mind covering the cost out of his meager paycheck. "I used to be that hungry too," he'd mutter when questioned. Then one morning, the boy didn't come. Days passed. Martin kept setting a plate out, hope dwindling with each sunrise, until, without warning, 4 black SUVs with government plates pulled into the parking lot. Uniformed officers stepped out, led by a high-ranking military man who asked for Martin by name. The cafe froze in stunned silence. The boy, Eli Thompson, had been living alone after his mother left, and his father, Master Sergeant James Thompson, was deployed overseas. No one knew, no one saw, except Martin. Eli's father had died in combat, but in his final letter he asked the Army to find the person who had fed his son without judgment, without questions. That person was Martin. Through quiet kindness, Martin had unknowingly honored a soldier's dying wish, and in doing so, he reminded an entire town, and eventually the world, that sometimes the smallest acts hold the greatest weight. Samantha Drew never expected her morning shift at Sonny's Cafe to change the trajectory of a child's life, or her own. She had always kept to herself, clocking in quietly, taking orders with a practiced smile, and blending into the rhythm of small-town Kansas. But the moment she saw that boy, everything shifted. He was always alone. Small, serious eyes, tattered backpack. Sat in the corner booth every day at 7:15 a.m., sipped water, read quietly, and never touched a menu. Samantha's instincts whispered something was wrong. One morning, she accidentally brought him a plate of scrambled eggs. "Extra from the kitchen," she said gently. The boy hesitated, but ate every bite. So began a silent, daily ritual. She never asked questions. He never shared more than a quiet, "thank you." But she saw the subtle changes, the way his shoulders relaxed, how his eyes started meeting hers. Other staff didn't understand. Her boss warned her not to give away food. Still, Samantha paid from her own tips, money she desperately needed, and kept bringing the meals. Then, after weeks of routine, he vanished. 1 day, 2, a week, 10 days. Samantha kept setting the plate down anyway. Hope flickered but didn't die. Then everything changed. 4 black SUVs rolled into the cafe parking lot. Out stepped a high-ranking military officer. "I'm looking for Samantha Drew," he said. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. The officer introduced himself as Colonel Daniel Reeves from the U.S. Army Special Forces. He carried a letter, a final message from Master Sergeant James Thompson, the boy's father. The colonel explained the boy, Eli Thompson, had been surviving alone after his mother abandoned him during the father's deployment. No one knew, except Samantha. The late Sergeant Thompson had written in his will, "Find the woman who fed my son. She gave him more than food. She gave him dignity." Samantha clutched the letter as the colonel saluted her. Behind him, uniformed officers followed suit. Her quiet kindness had touched lives far beyond that little diner booth. She hadn't just served breakfast, she had preserved a soldier's final wish and a boy's fragile hope. Samantha Drew didn't know the boy's name, but for nearly 2 months she made sure he never started the school day hungry. A quiet figure with guarded eyes and a book always in hand, the boy would slip into Sonny's cafe each morning, order a glass of water, and say little else. Samantha, a waitress with a gentle smile and a history of hunger herself, recognized the look in his eyes. It was the same one she had worn years ago, silent, scared, and starving for more than just food. So she began a quiet ritual. A mistaken plate of pancakes here, some extra toast there. He never asked questions. Neither did she. It wasn't charity. It was dignity served with syrup and scrambled eggs. But one cold Thursday he stopped coming. 10 days passed. The booth stayed empty, yet Samantha still placed a plate each morning. She tried not to let hope slip away, but worry sat heavy in her chest. That was until the morning 4 black SUVs with military plates pulled into the cafe parking lot. Inside stepped Colonel Daniel Reeves, flanked by uniformed officers. The room fell silent as he asked for Samantha. She stepped forward, unsure of what she had done to draw such attention. Then he handed her a folded letter, written by Master Sergeant James Thompson, the boy's father, now fallen in Afghanistan. Colonel Reeves revealed the truth. The boy, Eli Thompson, had been abandoned after his mother left and his father deployed. For months, Eli had survived alone, too proud and scared to ask for help. But every letter he wrote to his father mentioned one person, Miss Samantha, the woman who fed him without questions or pity. The colonel's voice trembled slightly as he read the final lines of the letter aloud in front of the stunned diner. "Tell her she didn't just feed a child, she upheld a soldier's final hope." Then the unimaginable happened. Colonel Reeves saluted Samantha. So did every officer behind him. Patrons rose to their feet. In that moment, the quiet waitress who once believed no one noticed her acts of kindness stood at the center of a nation's gratitude. She hadn't just served breakfast, she served humanity, and sometimes that's more than enough. Matthew Collins never sought recognition. For him, Slipping a plate of warm pancakes in front of a quiet, hungry boy was simply a reflex, born not of pity, but of memory. He knew what it felt like to be hungry, both for food and for someone to notice you. So when the boy showed up at the cafe each morning, sitting silently with nothing but a book and a glass of water, Matthew didn't ask questions. He just made sure the boy never left empty. Then one morning, the boy disappeared. Days turned into weeks. The plate Matthew kept leaving at the corner booth remained untouched, cold. Some co-workers called it a waste, others laughed at his persistence. But Matthew's conviction held. Kindness wasn't transactional. Until everything changed. On the 23rd day, 4 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. Out stepped Colonel David Reeves, Special Forces, with full dress uniform and medals gleaming in the light. He came looking for Matthew. The boy, the colonel explained, was Adam Thompson, son of Master Sergeant James Thompson, a soldier who had died in action weeks earlier. Adam had been alone, abandoned by his mother, surviving on his own while his father fought overseas, never telling anyone for fear of being taken away from the last home he had. But in every letter Sergeant Thompson wrote before his final mission, there was mention of one person. The man at the diner, Matthew, who gives Adam breakfast each morning without asking why. The colonel then read a final note from Sergeant Thompson, written before he died. Tell him he didn't just feed my boy. He preserved my son's dignity while I was gone. That's the kind of hero soldiers like me fight for. And then, in a moment that left every diner patron breathless, Colonel Reeves saluted Matthew. Not just as a civilian, but as a man who had carried out a sacred duty, honoring the child of a soldier with compassion and respect. It turns out sometimes the greatest service doesn't come from a battlefield. It comes from a breakfast booth, a warm plate, and a heart that sees someone in need and quietly answers. There are moments in life when the smallest act, a plate of pancakes, a warm smile, a quiet seat, carries a weight far beyond what we can see. Matthew Collins, a quiet waiter at a modest diner in Kansas, didn't set out to be a hero. He simply noticed a boy sitting alone every morning sipping water, reading quietly, and leaving without eating. So Matthew did what kindness compelled him to do. He fed the child, no questions asked. He didn't know the boy's name, didn't ask why he was alone, but he saw the hunger, not just for food, but for safety, for dignity. And day after day, Matthew made sure the child was nourished in body and spirit. Weeks later, everything changed. The child was gone. Then came the black SUVs, the uniforms, the letter from a fallen soldier, a father who wrote in his final words, "Tell him he didn't just feed my son. He protected what was left of my honor." That boy was the son of Master Sergeant James Thompson, left alone after his mother abandoned him while his father fought overseas. And Matthew, without knowing the story, became the last line of compassion between a soldier's dying wish and a child's quiet suffering. The lesson? Kindness doesn't need permission. It doesn't need context. It simply needs to be given. Because we never know what battle someone else is fighting or what lifeline our gesture might become. So today, ask yourself, when was the last time you helped someone without expecting anything in return? Every morning for months, Jenny Millers noticed the same quiet boy slip into her Kansas diner, always alone, always early, with a backpack too big and eyes too careful for his age. He never ordered more than a glass of water, never caused trouble. So one day, Jenny accidentally brought him a plate of pancakes. "The kitchen made an extra," she said gently. He hesitated, but hunger won, and from that moment it became a silent ritual. Pancakes, oatmeal, Eggs, day after day. No name, no questions. Just food and kindness. Jenny paid for every meal out of her own tips. Some co-workers scoffed, "He's a stray. They never stay." But Jenny knew better. She had once been that hungry too. Then the boy stopped coming. Days passed. Jenny still left a plate out, just in case. The stool sat empty, until one morning 4 black SUVs pulled up outside the diner. Uniformed military officers entered. The lead one stepped forward and asked for Jenny. His voice cracked as he handed her a letter. The boy, Adam, was the son of Master Sergeant James Thompson, a Special Forces soldier killed in action. Abandoned by his mother, Adam had survived alone while his father served. In his final letter, Sergeant Thompson wrote, "Thank the woman who fed my son without asking questions. She preserved my dignity and gave my son a reason to hold on." In that moment, Jenny realized her quiet, consistent kindness had not only filled a child's stomach, but honored a soldier's last hope. Sometimes the greatest acts of heroism don't involve grand gestures. They happen behind diner counters, through unspoken understanding and warm pancakes served without judgment. Sometimes the quietest acts of kindness echo the loudest. Jenny, a humble waitress in a small-town Kansas diner, reminded us of a powerful life lesson. Give without needing a reason. She never asked the boy's name. She didn't question why he came in every morning alone, carrying a backpack too big for his small frame, only ordering water. Jenny simply placed a warm plate of pancakes in front of him each day, smiled, and walked away. Because sometimes a hot meal matters more than the answers. Later, she discovered the truth. The boy was the son of a fallen soldier. Her quiet kindness had not only filled his stomach, it had protected his dignity, upheld the honor of a father fighting his final battle far from home. Here's the lesson. You don't need to know someone's full story to treat them with compassion. A meal, a gentle smile, or even silent understanding can save a soul on the edge. If you believe that kindness doesn't need a reason, type it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to LT Heartstrings to discover more heartfelt stories that prove a little love can go a very long way.